Hello and welcome to Women Conquer Business. I'm your host, Jen McFarland. This week we're taking a small break, and I'm going to share with you one of my favorite episodes of all time, also one of the most popular, How to Release Yourself from Limitations with Brian Fowlie. Enjoy. Hi, my name is Jen McFarland. I'm the founder of Women Conquer Business. I have over 25 years of training, teaching, and executive experience in leadership, strategic project planning, and digital marketing. Each week on the Women Conquer Business podcast, we teach you how to help you and your business thrive. Are you ready? Let's go forth and conquer. Today we meet Brian Fowlie, a man who was sentenced to life in prison, who opened his mind and his heart and found redemption using meditation and journaling. If you'd like to learn more about how to break through the walls of your self-imposed limitations and develop personal empowerment with meditation while learning about one man's dramatic transformation, you are in the right place.
I love the sounds of the waves lapping on the shore and looking at these incredible trees that come. The tree line comes right down to the lake and fresh air, and it's an awesome place to be talking to you.
Well, I just want to say I'm so grateful that I got to meet you this week and that you've been here talking to everybody. And it's just, I've learned so much from you about leadership. And I just think you have a really compelling story. Is it safe to say you never thought there was a time in your life that you never thought you'd be doing this?
Absolutely. There's many years in my life that I never thought this was even on the realm of possibilities. As a matter of fact, it was beyond the ability to fantasize about it because I couldn't even, it was that big. There's no possible way my mind could have even went in that direction. Absolutely.
Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So at the age of 21, I actually committed a crime of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 17 years to life in California State Prison, and went into San Quentin, a young man full of fear and desperation and despair and hopelessness, and knowing I was going to die in prison. And the reality of that was pretty much evidence-based of what I saw of the prison system from the county jail experience, and lifers didn't come out. So my life was going to be the convict life behind the walls of San Quentin. The first, say, 9.5 years of that were pretty heavy adjusting to that reality and what that looked like for me in a very structured environment. Concrete walls and steel and routine, and depending on someone else to open the cell door to allow access to air that fresh air at some times that the cell blocks certainly weren't. So very structured. And to be here today, that journey, that transformation that had to happen on the inside was quite a ride.
You're an amazing man. I'm just going to say that. Like I've been able to just see you and be with you like all week. And I can't imagine that you're the same person today that you were when you went to prison.
Yeah, not even close. And society was doing the right thing. Believe me, I needed to make some adjustments, and my community was not better for having me in it. And removing me was necessary for me to make the changes that I needed to make to actually understand citizenship and value that to be a part of our communities. And when we talk about leadership, that's really where my focus went to, was how do I build a better me to be a leader in my community? And as a lifer, my community wasn't, the town that I grew up in anymore. I was exiled. I was in exile from there. So my community was the prison yard. And so I had a really hostile, aggressive, dysfunctional, steeped in years of prison culture environment in which to work with. So I had an incredible training ground that I was going to go a different direction, which I think is a lot like the business world. Like, where do I want to be as an owner of a nonprofit today? And what do I want to be doing? And what's the models that I want to replicate, or the direction, that I want to go? And it was quite a journey.
when I talk to business owners and they say they don't have access to resources, or they can't make changes. We all have these like mental barriers. We put ourselves in this cell, and I've seen a lot of parallels like between, and we've talked about it throughout the week, how we put ourselves in these cages, in these cells of thinking, and we really limit ourselves. And when I talk to people and they say they don't have access to resources, and then I talk to you and I'm like, man, how'd you get access to all these books and these people when you were in prison? Like, It's just amazing to me.
Right. And I think too that I think you're right on point with there's all kinds of prisons is what I was hearing. There's to find ourselves in a cell in the business world in our company and being stuck and feeling like we're pigeonholed and don't have much direction to go. There's nowhere left to turn. That's a good picture that you painted. And as a man who had to tap into creative resources to think differently than the status quo in the prison system, to reach outside of the box and find how to draw people to me, I had to use some creative angles and reframe the way I was looking at it. And freedom's not a geographical location. I mean, there's all kinds of prisons in the world. And I came around on that when I became a meditator and I started going inside instead of outside. I mean, my whole prison experience was looking at what was around me and all this reinforcement on my limitations. Every day I was told how limited I was, many times a day, over and over and over again. This is all you get. This is the limitations. And I took the other direction and went inside and started opening prison doors. Gates were opening for me because of, I think, the creative energy that I was tapping into. And the resources came. They came to me. I wasn't able to get to them. And I initiated every contact, whether it was writing to someone about bringing a meditation program into the prison, and then getting a response, and then getting books, and then getting, a spot that we could do a program. I mean, it just kind of, next thing you know, a Trappist monk is coming in to teach centering prayer, from Kentucky. And he comes to California to spend time with us. And next thing you know, the warden of that prison sitting in that room, closing his eyes for 20 minutes as we did. So, I mean, that's an incredible thing to happen from reaching outside the box and taking the step and making the contact, or sitting there and saying, oh, I don't have any resources. This is all I've got. This is where I'm at. This is, I have to look beyond. And I think as leaders, as growing companies, we always need to look for the next barrier to look beyond, to get beyond it.
Wow, my mind is just blown. I'm sorry. I'm like processing all of that as we sit here. I mean, we were walking, this is just an amazing, this Twinlow retreat center is just so amazing. And so we were walking last night and we went up to the labyrinth and, and we're talking and we're coming down and you're talking about, how you've had all these great gurus and people come into your life, and to know that you were able to initiate all of that and just take steps. I mean, you're sitting, you're in prison. You're like, well, what have I got to lose? I'm just going to write to people and see if anybody comes. Right. And then, and I think that, some of the limitations that we all put on ourselves when we're out here, in our own place is like, well, who am I? Who am I to write a letter and reach out to somebody, And I think it's just such a powerful lesson to think man, you got to look outside the box. You have to always be searching for that new thing, searching for that knowledge and not being limited by what you see right in front of you. I think that's a really powerful message for anybody. But especially a business owner or a solopreneur, one person without employees, who doesn't have an unlimited budget, to get out there and do it. Meditation was that the first step, or was it reading first and then moving into meditation?
I would say it was the meditation was the second step. My uncomfortableness with where I was the first step, and acknowledging that I was a place where mentally and spiritually, and I think too as a human being, and where my life was, I wasn't satisfied. So meditation was a tool that I used to expand that, to go into a different place. So I'd say it was second. And what happened was it unfolded in a way that I didn't realize that it would take me to the lengths of thinking outside the evidence of what the prison was telling me was my reality, and to keep on stepping in spite of the external evidence that was telling me I was going to die in prison. You know, it was like everything around me told me I was limited and that I was going to die, that I was going to die the life or death in prison. Lifer, not life or death, but life or death as a life prisoner, 17 years to life, that I was going to die that death inside of the state prison. And it took me to a place where, you know, I went beyond that and was like, if this is what I want, what am I going to do today? Like, I can't see 10 years from now, but I got today. And I really got into that mindset of being the best me that I could every day. And I wanted to go to sleep knowing that the footprint that I had left prior to prison was one that I couldn't change, but I could change the footprint that I was leaving today, if that makes sense. It was like, this is what I got. So what are you going to do today? How are you going to show up today? And a lot of times we can get stuck in our past failures where we're coming up short or where it looks like we can't go anymore. And it's like, what am I going to do today instead of being paralyzed by it? It can stop us in our tracks and we can be completely non-productive and maybe even go backwards and be destructive.
Absolutely. I thank you for reminding me about that. I mean, I think that you ruminate on the past or you get fearful about the future and you don't stop and pause and feel real grateful about what do I have today? What's right in front of me? Who am I with? I'm really learning about meditation and really embarking on that journey myself right now. And whenever I pause and say, hey, I've got this great husband, you know, I have a roof over my head. And it just calms me down instantly to realize all the great things that I have. You know, I have a business that's doing really well. I have all these things, you know, why am I stressing about next week, you know, or next month when next month may not even come because you don't know.
Yeah. And it's pretty good today.
And today is great.
Yeah. And I think that the meditative process that we get better everywhere. Like my life got improved everywhere through becoming a meditator. And I think there's creative juices that start flowing. And I think knots get unraveled where, you know, the universe is doing the therapy and I'm just sitting and opening myself up to that process and like not knowing what the agenda is going to be. And I can bite into in meditation that what a good meditation is. What does a good meditation look like? Oh, I experienced bliss, or I check out, or my mind went blank, which is crazy, by the way. Minds don't go blank. The best we can do is focus them in the direction we want them to go. So that stops a lot of people from being meditators because they say, I can't make my mind go blank. I'm a businessman. I'm always thinking, you know, and yeah, you are. And you're also, when you're thinking about business, you're working into that very concentrated focus. You know, you're focusing in a direction that you're moving and you're practicing a form of non-spiritual meditation. And so the focus happens. And as we open up to the process and say, yeah, my meditation may be a struggle, you know, and the practice I use, we use the Sanskrit word sadhana, which means, you know, when we sit for meditation, we're doing sadhana, which is sustained effort, not deep relaxation. You know what I mean? It's sustained effort. What happens in the workforce? You know, we're building a business, sustained effort. You have to stick with it and show up every day and open to the process. And the creativity starts coming where I start seeing things differently. It's not that I just took my glasses off and changed my lenses, but it starts changing from the inside. The prison stayed the same. The limitations were still there. The evidence that I was seeing was still there. And I just started looking at the things that I wanted to look at instead of the obstacles in front of me. You know, I wasn't any longer buying into the lie, and I was moving into possibility. And I think that happens with creative energy. Like my psyche gives me what I'm capable of handling. And that's why I like journaling, like writing. You know, I'm a fan of the writing process because it cracks open something inside of me that doesn't come forth unless I honor it by giving it a gateway to come through. In other words, like when I journal, I don't worry about punctuation. I don't capitalize at the first, letter of the new sentence. Sometimes I don't put periods or commas or semicolons where they belong. And I just kind of let it flow, and it takes on a life of its own, and it opens up and gives me more. My psyche gives me more when it starts the momentum. But I have to open the gate. I have to start tapping into it. And then next thing you know, there's an external manifestation of that. Like I'm seeing things different in my world. It starts changing.
That's amazing. I honestly think that I can't remember the exact statistics, but they say that we only access 10% of our brain or something like that.
If that, maybe 3%.
Maybe 3%. Yeah. And I've kind of wondered if meditation unlocks some of that, gives us access to more, not because your mind is blank, but just because you're introducing a new process and you start to see things differently, things that have been in front of you all the time, but you just haven't been able to see it.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that the meditative process is an expansive process, and it's expanding. It expands us. We come into alignment with more possibility, and we kind of open the heart. We open, the heart to a way that is naturally comes out in our external world. They have to align up at some point, and it starts, with that inside journey that opens it up to change on the outside, seeing things differently. So I may see my business in a little different angle. I may see resources from a different perspective, but if I'm left in my little prison cell looking through a keyhole in the door, the only thing I see is, directly in front of that keyhole. I don't get the panoramic view, and meditation is a way to start cultivating my sight to the panoramic. I get the bigger picture, and then I'm able to act in my microcosm, in a more panoramic view with a bigger picture of where I'm going or what I want to believe in or what I want to see as possibility.
That's amazing. So now that you're not in prison, which thank you for that. I'm glad you're not in prison. I'm glad that you're out here, sharing. And I think that your story is very unique because I think it's a very small percentage of people that go through this journey and get to leave. Is that fair? I mean, that's
very small percentage that survive a life sentence, are released from a life sentence. And I didn't win an appeal in court. I didn't get let off for what I did. I didn't get out early for good behavior. What I did in California was I not only served the time that they wanted to see me serve, which turned out to be more than 22 years. So I went in as a 21-year-old man and came out 43 years old, 22 plus years later. And I made the changes. See, they have an accountability thing, and they have public safety is their first concern, and it's the right concern. And to bet on a guy like me, who was destructive in my youth, it took a long time to show them that I had patterns of problem solving, that were appropriate, as a citizen.
Right.
So it took a long time to show them that, and rightly so. It should take a long time to show that. I believe that as a guy who, is a family man, and I want my family to be safe in my community. I think about that today. And what does that mean? Guess what? I'm your neighbor. I'm your neighbor. And who do you have as a neighbor? Hopefully a better product out of this prison system than you put in 22 years earlier, right? That's what we would want.
Yeah, and they want to make sure that when things happen, your resources are, sound, and you're not going to reach for a weapon or something like that. They want you to be that man who, when somebody gets shot, you're calling the police and helping.
First aid, yeah.
Like you did. You told me that story about, a young man who got shot and came to your porch and, and you helped him.
I did. Yeah. And that's who my community wants me to be. And guess who showed up? That guy showed up.
Yeah.
That's who I am.
That's who you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what we've been working throughout the week is your program that basically is what's getting you stuck. What's holding you back? What's making you angry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And then what are some action steps? What are some tangible action steps that you can take to make change?
My approach is from the symptomatic, and we're looking at what's not working. Where are we stuck, or what's the self-inflicted limitation that's keeping me from being where I want to be? What's keeping me on my business from being where I want to be? And then who's accountable to it? It's me. I'm the only one, man. It's not your fault.
That was the part when I got really angry, by the way. I just want to say that. Like, I had my laundry list of complaints. We go through it, like, what's making you really angry and stuff. And then the next day it's like, okay, well, who's accountable? And I was like, it's me. And then I was just like, and I kept writing it down and I'm like, nope, yep, that's me. Oh, yeah, I'm responsible for that. And I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. And then since we're accountable to it, we have to come up with at least 3 solutions. And that's, we have to have action plans. Like not just say, hey, oh yeah, it's my fault and go ahead and carry that burden. But how do we fix it? What's the action plan? Because without awareness, there's not really responsibility to it. So if I don't know it's there, if I don't know it's a problem, then how do I go about fixing it? I can't. So with awareness comes responsibility. And that's what we're talking about in teaching, this, really simple, not easy, but simple process of identifying, what the issue is, that I'm responsible for it. I'm accountable to it. I'm playing at least a part in the role of it, and I could do some things different to change it. And then what are those things that I need to apply in order to get outside of that limitation, to get on the other side of it?
Yeah, I love that. I love the way you say it. I mean, it is so challenging and simple at the same time. And I think it just really lets you know that you don't need a lot of resources. You don't need to have the biggest guru or coaching plan or whatever you think that you need. Like, you need to focus on what's inside of you and what's keeping you from doing that thing, whatever that is. If it's, it doesn't even have to do with your business, anything that's keeping you from being the best you. And how do you unlock that?
Yeah, and that's a good point. It just made me think of something that I've heard, and I don't know where I heard it exactly the first time, but there's not an external solution to that internal dilemma. There's just not. It's going to be an inside job. Like you said, it's mine. And what do I do with it? And it's up to me to make the move,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've been researching and thinking about for myself is a morning routine or an evening routine. Do you have anything like that? Like, do you get up and do you meditate first thing or journal, or do you have any patterns that you follow?
Yeah, and they fluctuate through time and depending on what's going on. And I would say that today, my morning routine is very different than it was 10 years ago because a lot less structure, and I've got babies.
Yeah.
And young babies. And my routine is really structured around them. And the self-care has to take place. I have to put myself first in some areas. And meditation is one of the things that, since I've come home, has been in a state of flux. In prison, it was really easy. It's what started as discipline, then became a ritual that I would do this, at this time of day. And in meditation, it's good to do it the same time of morning. So you kind of develop an internal clock on when you're going to do this process. And then the same time in the afternoon. And then it turned into devotion, where it started as discipline to ritual to devotion, to where I felt like I couldn't breathe right unless I sat and meditated. I was really taking care of myself. And that hasn't become so important out here with all the distractions and life happening and working and hustling and making money and taking care of my family and the babies and everything that there is to, being a homeowner now and, having to, I got a lot of work to do on my 3 acres,
Well, you sound like a normal guy.
Yeah. And imagine that. Here I am. So it's very different, but it changes. And writing, journaling is a big part of my creative process. So when I tap into a place of wanting to create, wanting to change, wanting to develop a nonprofit, journaling is a big part of that, and I like to journal in the morning and in the evening. And I also like to meditate in the morning and in the evening. And I like to meditate before drinking coffee, which is a stimulant, and it gets my mind hopping, right? So it's like first thing in the morning, I cool my body down, I'll, do some stretching, I'll sit down and meditate, and then get up and start my day. And when I make time for that, I tend to have a more grounded day. I tend to be a little more grounded throughout. And then by the afternoon, I'm screwed up again. So I'm ready to do it again. So I'll do the same kind of thing and just kind of slow it down. It's a little harder in the afternoon because there's so many things left to do when I come home from from work, that it's a tougher time rather than first thing in the morning. The challenge in first thing in the morning is I'm trying to get out the door, so I got to get up a little earlier. I mean, literally, it's a 4:30 a.m. wake up for me to
because you got the kids, you got to go to work, there's a lot to do in the morning before I get out of the house, so I have to have that time, and I have a better day. And depending on what I'm working on depends on the intensity of that, because as I'm working on heavier stuff or more complicated, or my life is getting more complicated, my days are including being spread out in different directions, I need that more. It's not the place to throttle back on that. It's the place to pick that up, because the challenges are becoming tougher. And I know that's a solution for me. You know what I mean? It's like people tend to do the opposite. Yeah.
Oh, it's getting complicated. It's getting more complex. I don't have time for that anymore. Yeah. Well, that's when I really need it. And then I find that I traverse those things better.
What would be a couple of books that you would recommend to people, either about leadership or meditation or just stuff that you've liked to read? Because you're like an avid reader. You do a lot of reading. I
do. One of my favorite books is The Prophet. Khalil
Gibran.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a bedside book
that's a good book.
And I love to go back to it. It's something I pick up, and it just moves my soul. It gives me grounded. I think it grounds me in what's really important and present in my life. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl is another one that has helped me define a reason to be, to have the purpose. Like, what is the purpose of my business? What is the purpose of my life? What am I doing? Like, I have to have a reason for going forward. Otherwise, any direction is going to be okay. And that's not okay for me. So those are two. And then I gave you one last night. That is a book written by one of my dear friends and meditation teachers, Dada Nabaneel Ananda. That's a mouthful, but he is a yogi, a master musician, a writer, and a meditation teacher. And his book that I gave you is called Close Your Eyes, Open Your Mind, A Practical Guide to Spiritual Meditation.
And I love the practical guide. That was the part that we talked about. I'm like, I don't need this like esoteric, like fuzzy thing. I need to know, just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And I'll do it.
And that's what we've been talking about all week, is practical application, not theoretical concepts on how to make change. We've been talking about, tell me what to do. How do I do it? Line it out. And that's what our 3-step process is about, with identifying, accountability, and then an action plan. It's practical application, and apply it and see what happens. It's like, tell me how to do it in my daily life. Don't tell me some theory on what it should be like, because I always come up short on those things. I always blow it,
Yeah, no, theory is great if you're writing research papers and going to grad school. I did a lot of theory and a lot of papers and learned a lot. I actually studied leadership in grad school, and it taught me a lot, and I rely on it. But nothing beats practical applications and that on the ground.
For me, I need those kind of examples. How do you do it on a daily basis? How do you do it in your daily life? And that's what I can grab onto and then apply in my life. I need help. I need to be told how to do it.
I think we all do.
Thank you for listening to the Women Conquer Business podcast. If you're wondering, what's next? Here are a few suggestions. If you love the show, be sure to subscribe. If you want to follow me on social media, you can find Women Conquer Business on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. And finally, if the episode today brought something up for you and you need to talk, email me at hello@jenmcfarland.com. The Women Conquer Business podcast is written and produced by Jen McFarland and Foster Growth LLC in beautiful Southeast Portland, Oregon. Thanks again for listening.